Jesus says when two or more are gathered that he'll be there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why is it two or more? Like one person? Is he abandoning the one person who prays by themselves?
Well, that would kind of do away with the whole footprints parable, wouldn't it? The footprints in the sand parable.
What about this Christian woman in prison in Pakistan? She's been in solitary confinement for 8 years. Has the Lord abandoned her because she's praying by her onesie?
Okay, so here's the key to answering this question.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus, when he says where two or three are gathered in my name, is talking about corporate worship. There is a difference between corporate worship and individual worship. There's a different way that we do worship. And, there's been many times in history when Christians have got together in very, very small groups, even groups of just two. And this is the only opportunity they have for corporate worship. Corporate worship is the kind of thing that we do at church. And so there's a different kind of worship. It's worship when you have worship together. You might do it in small group or whatever it might be. And so Jesus knew that down through history there would be lots of times when people would gather together in small groups, and because their group was so small, just two or three, they would be discouraged that their church was dying, or that Jesus had abandoned them, or that their church was just, it was coming to an end. And he's like, look, when there's only two or three, I am there in the midst of you. Don't ever forget that. Don't ever become discouraged if your church is small. And I know in my circumstances, there's been times when I've preached to crowds of 15,000 people, and there's been times when I've preached to crowds of 5 people. And I think that both of those circumstances, both of those sermons are just as important as each other, because, it is God's calling. When God lays a message on your heart, just go and preach to whoever's there to listen. And where two or three are gathered, God is right there in the midst of them in a corporate worship setting. However, on an individual setting, it's very, very different. Jesus says a number of things in Matthew chapter 28 and verse 20. He says, "Lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the world." In Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 5, he says, "I will never leave you nor forsake you." In Psalms 23 and verse 6, if we go over to the end of that famous psalm there, Psalms 23 and verse 6. And so what we find is that there are multitudes of places where the Bible says that God is never going to leave us as an individual. "Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will live in the house of the Lord forever." This is very, very clear language. God is not abandoning you because you are on your own. It's a different kind of worship. It's a different kind of experience that you have when you worship one-on-one with God than when you are worshipping corporately, as the Bible talks about in the passage where two or three are gathered.
And it's so true. As humans, we have that human nature to think, oh, there's lots of people here, big stuff is happening, God must be working in a big way. And then when we see small groups, we're like, oh, it's too small for God to bother. But it's not true. God is there with two or three, and he's there when there's one. Wonderful promise, wonderful reminder of who God is with his character, with his beautiful, loving character. If you have a question, give us a call. Our number here is 1-800-FAITH-FM, 1-800-324-843. You can text your questions. We love it that way too. 0491 064 669. We love fielding your questions and answering them for you. Send us through whatever you're thinking.